Welcome to the all new season of the Families Navigating Addiction and Recovery podcast. I'm Jeff Jones. This season, I'll be sharing honest conversations, practical insights, and meaningful discussions with amazing guests in the addiction, recovery, and family support field. We'll talk about the realities families face when addiction becomes part of their story, the fear, the strain on relationships, the uncertainty, the hope, and the small shifts that can begin to change how a family responds. As you listen along, I hope each episode gives you something to reflect on, something useful to take with you, and a little more support for the road ahead. Okay, so welcome to this episode. And I am very excited to have this conversation with Christina Veselak. I have considered her my addiction nutrition mentor for over a decade when I met her in South Denver. And we've had this conversation before. It's debatable at which place, but so Christina Veselak is a very special person in my life because she introduced me to thinking outside the box in the mental health and addiction world. So Christina Veselak she has the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition. She has the website aminoacidtherapy.com and eatingproteinsaves.lives.org. So she comes with quite a bit of background as a marriage and family therapist, along with the biochemical, bionutritional component, which she has trained, I would say, close to several hundred people. Um, and so she has a level 1 and level 2 training. I have been a student of hers. I still consider myself a student of hers. So welcome, Christine. I'm glad you're here.
Jeff, thank you so much. It's really wonderful to have long-term relationships with my students and colleagues and to see how everybody takes this material and runs with it in different ways. And of course, one of the ways you've run with it is with families, and families are dear to my heart because that's how I started.
Yeah,
I've been licensed as a marriage and family therapist for 40 years
right.
and started immediately working with families in the addiction field as soon as I graduated from school. I had no intention of doing that at all, but that's what happened.
Right.
And in
Yeah.
the process, I discovered that I loved the field of addiction, that I had addiction all through my family tree. Haha. And I loved working with family members of addicted families, whether they be
Yeah.
adult children or spouses, um, or parents.
Yeah. 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 So I am wondering, can you tell your story from the standpoint of why you're doing what you're doing?
Well, I think I really want to start from the perspective of being an adult child,
Okay.
being the adult child of alcohol use disorder, being the adult child of trauma, and on top of that, having 11 different biochemical drivers, bionutritional drivers of my depression, anxiety, ADHD, um, avoidant personality disorder, you name it, I had it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Let that the
Yeah, well, I do remember in the level 2 training, I learned quite a bit about your story. And I know when you say 11 drivers of, mental health issues, I totally get it. And so
Yeah.
with those 11 drivers, I'm assuming you tried a lot of things before you came to the amino acid and nutrition kind of approach.
Well, kind of. I
Okay.
mean, I had been depressed from day one, and that was biochemical. But then I also had birth trauma and prenatal trauma. So I think it intertwined right from the beginning. But when I was in college, my third year of college, I discovered that a layer of my depression, and there were many layers to my depression, but one of the layers was due to being allergic to eggs, and
Wow.
that eggs contributed significantly to my depression. And that when I eliminated eggs completely 100% from my diet for a couple of decades, actually, which is hard to do, um, my depression stayed lighter. That whenever I brought eggs back in, it felt like this dark rain cloud descending upon me.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Wow.
So I discovered that, in when I was like 19.
Uh-huh.
And then
And
I
then got
started,
curious.
and well, at that point, it was just, oh, well, this is interesting, right?
Yeah.
And I had read an early article about food allergies causing, mental health symptoms. And that was my very first introduction to this whole field was when I read this article when I was 19 or 18 and
Wow.
discovered that, eggs contributed to my depression.
Yeah.
And then, my mid 20s, I thought I had allergies, so I went to an allergist who did a scratch test for IgE allergies and said, you're allergic to strawberries. Completely missed all the other things that the food intolerances that were contributing to my depression and anxiety, which it
Yeah.
turned out, weren't just eggs, but were also corn and soy and gluten and,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And the conventional allergist just completely missed all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, when I met you, one of the things I was, maybe unconsciously attracted to is my mom back in the late 70s and 80s, food
Yeah.
allergies. I mean, she wrote some cookbooks. She wrote a book on food allergies. She had a company called, Mastering Food Allergies or something like that. And William Crook was her, a big mentor
Hmm.
for her. But yeah, so it's that's a part of your story. And so you
They
started
were.
this journey at like 19 years old. And I mean, over the years, and I've heard so many stories from you over the years, you have got to a place where I, it's like you've incorporated the nutritional and amino acid perspective into what's considered best practices and
Hmm.
pharmaceuticals, which are, you know, toxic and potentially addictive as a first line of defense. And so many people I think it's either or. And what I have learned from you is it can be, but it can also be both and.
It really can be both and I think my own story illustrates this. That in somewhere around age 24, age 25, I got into therapy for the first time and started my own sort of emotional trauma healing journey. Um, and then, of course, that continued because trauma, has layers upon layers upon layers that needs to be healed. So that, I kind of started there, but it only went so far, right? That this is the thing. It only goes so far. And then when I was 30, I got introduced to amino acid therapy and I found a holistic doctor. And this was the beginning of it all coming together for me, Jeff.
Yeah.
This is when I discovered tyrosine and I discovered fish oil and I went on thyroid medication because that was a piece of it, right? That's medication.
Right.
And then I was working at an addiction treatment program. I was also organizing my life around 3/4 of a beer every day because
Uh-huh.
I discovered the 3/4 of a beer, a whole beer put me to sleep. Okay. But 3/4 of a beer, that little sweet spot, made the depression go away temporarily till the next
Yeah.
morning and made me happy. Happy. I like being happy. I like being happy so much that I organize my entire life around 3/4 of a beer at the end of every day.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. Yeah.
that is considered an addictive relationship with a substance.
Well,
Okay?
yeah, I'm glad that you name that as an addictive relationship with a substance because I'm thinking so many people that may be listening to this who would have a family member who's in addiction, potentially severe addiction, they may not see a relationship of 3/4 of a beer a day as being
Right.
problematic or
That's
addictive.
right. Because, of course, you can't get drunk on 3/4 of a beer.
Right.
At least not really. I do have very low tolerance, but anyway. Um, so it wasn't a problem. It hadn't become a problem, but I was very clear that I was organizing, it was an organizing principle of my life.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the big characteristics of addictive behaviors is that they become an organizing principle of your life. And this
sure.
3/4 of a beer certainly was. And then in 1993, a book came out called Alcoholism, the Biochemical Connection by Joan Matthew Larson. She later
Right.
renamed it to 7 Weeks to Sobriety. And if those listening have never read it, please go out and get it. It's a wonderful book. 7 Weeks to Sobriety by Joan Matthew Larson. And in it, she talks about a particular biotype. Not all alcoholics are created equal, and alcoholism has very different manifestations in the world and in different people. And she describes three of them that she calls biotypes. And one of them is where you've had deep, dark depression from day one that's only relieved by alcohol, and you just happen to have either Gaelic or Scandinavian somewhere back in your ethnic history. Well, my father was Danish. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
reading this and I'm thinking, deep, dark depression from day one, alcohol relieves it, Scandinavian heritage. That's me.
Yeah.
So she recommends evening primrose oil every day. And so I started taking evening primrose oil every day because it has a substance in it, gamma linolenic acid, GLA, that
Right.
feeds this deficient brain chemical and relieves the depression.
Yeah.
3 days, Jeff, after I got on my evening primrose oil, the deep, dark depression lifted. It just
Yeah.
lifted. Now, there
Yeah.
was still other depression because I hadn't discovered everything yet, but the deep, dark, and
Yeah.
people who
Yeah.
have this
Yeah.
know exactly what I mean, it was gone. It was gone as if it had never
Yeah.
been there.
So,
And I didn't need alcohol anymore.
yeah. So one thing I want to let people know is what Christina is talking about here is part of her level one training, and the alcohol biotype Joan Matthew
Mhm.
Larson named was the omega-6 deficient, I think. And Christina, I am curious to kind of jump in a little bit different direction. I am curious about your perspective of people warming up to new information outside of what's considered best practices, to where people may be open to some of this information from Dr. Joan Matthew Larson, and people may want to come to one of your trainings or one of your webinars where you talk about this. So
Mhm.
I'm curious from you, what have you seen that is an obstacle for people, and how can they get over it? An obstacle to considering new information.
I think the biggest obstacle is a misunderstanding of the medical profession and medical research. Because this information, even though the research goes back actually to the beginning of the 20th century, um, has not made its way into conventional medical practice or psychiatric practice. In fact, when I think it was President Roosevelt, there was a distinct decision made to only put research money into pharmaceuticals and to sort of simplify and unify medical education. Because
Uh-huh.
prior to that time, there was homeopathy, there was nutrition, there was all this, there was herbal medicine, and it was all part of the medical canon and medical world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But because of that, one school taught this and one school taught that, and another school taught this, right? And it wasn't really unified. And so it was decided, partly because pharmaceuticals are made out of petroleum products in a big part, and there was a desire to make more money from petroleum products. It was decided to unify medical education and practice and to emphasize pharmaceuticals because of their petroleum uh, way to make money. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And so from that point on, research money went into pharmaceuticals and was pulled out of nutrition. That's not to
Right.
say there was no nutritional research at all, because there was,
Yeah.
but that's not where the brunt of it went. And I and some colleagues actually went to NIH a couple, maybe 10 years ago, and said, hey, look, we'd like some money to study amino acid therapy for addiction recovery. And we were told bluntly that there was no money for that, that the money only went to pharmaceuticals.
Oh, wow. So you have intimate knowledge
Yes,
and
we were
understanding.
told this bluntly.
Yeah.
Well, so the result of that, Jeff, and everybody listening, is that medical professionals are not taught about nutrition, are not taught about the nutrients the brain needs to repair itself and function optimally,
Right.
uh, are not taught any of this. And there's insufficient research. Yes, there is research, it's real research, it's good research. There's just not enough of it.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so, you know, what doctors and what dietitians tell their clients is, oh, you can't trust supplements. There's not enough research. Well, there's a
Uh-huh.
real reason why there's not enough research. But anyway, there's not enough research, and it's not regulated by the FDA. Well, I'm
Right.
not sure that the FDA has done a great job regulating pharmaceuticals either. But
Yeah.
anyway, but they say, and it's not regulated by the FDA, and therefore and I did hear a PhD dietitian, registered dietitian, say this in a roundtable a couple of weeks ago. Therefore, all supplement companies are just out to make money, and you can't trust any of them.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So thank you very much. You really, in my mind, you answered very concisely the obstacles, and you could go on and on. You could probably write a
Okay.
book about it, but like th
But
that's
Jeff, I
not
just want
the
to I want to add one more thing. Okay,
please.
because this is what I told that dietitian. You cannot say all supplement companies. You can say many supplement companies. You can say some supplement companies, but you cannot say all. And the reason why is because there are nutritionists like me and others, functional nutritionists, who just like doctors want to make sure that when they prescribe a medication to their patient, the patient gets the medication and it's a safe medication. Nutritionists like me want to make sure that when we recommend a supplement to our clients, we can feel assured that what we are recommending is safe and is of high quality, and that what's
Right,
on the label is in the pill, because otherwise our clients aren't going to get better when we recommend supplements. So we have a vested interest in reputable supplement companies, and there are actually ethical, reputable supplement companies out there who stay alive because practitioners like me,
right.
because they've proven to practitioners like me that their product is trustworthy.
Yeah. And there's some, from what I've heard, there are supplement companies that are owned by pharmaceutical companies, and that's not quite so obvious. So there's quite a bit going on there, but I want
There
to
is.
shift to so for people listening to this who do have some curiosity and some openness, one thing,
And desperation, Jeff.
and yes, yeah. So
Okay, I was
I
desperate.
wanted I wanted to start with the very best high dream of openness and curiosity. And you're absolutely right. So oftentimes people don't have openness and curiosity, and it is like crisis before
Yeah.
they will change, you know.
Well,
But
when
what I
I was
wanted,
30, when I was 30, I was open-minded and I was curious, and I'd always been interested in nutrition, and I'd had this experience when I was 19. I was also desperate.
yeah.
I was barely functioning. I had severe social anxiety. I had severe
And
depression, and I needed to do something.
And it's so much harder to do the research when someone is in crisis. And what I did
Yes.
want to say is on your website, aminoacidtherapy.com, there's scientific research, quite a bit of it
Yes.
there.
There's quite a bit of it.
And
There's pages of it.
yeah, it just goes on and on and on, really. And it would be easier to look at that before you are in crisis, for instance, addiction in the family kind of crisis, or brain fog kind of
Hmm.
crisis, or
Right.
any kind of immune kind of crisis where one is not even able to function day to day. What I wanted to say is there's this scientific information, quite a bit of research on Christina's website. And I also know about, for people who are curious to try some of this, there's this thing called trialing, and Christina talks about this. I'm guessing she has some videos about this on her website. If she doesn't now, she did, and
Well,
it
on
is
my YouTube
something.
channel.
Oh, okay. And
Right,
your
because I do
YouTube
have a
channel.
YouTube channel, and I do have a book that talks about all this as well,
Right.
right?
So Christina's book, the name of it is Eat. The subtitle is A Guide to Radiant Recovery Using Food and Amino Acids to Repair the Addicted Brain and Reduce Cravings. And in that book, there's 7 specific keys. It's like it gets right to the meat. Here, here's 7 specific keys. And, for people who are curious or in crisis, some level of crisis, or who are willing to get a book, there's quite a bit of information. And what I was saying about trialing is I'm not sure if it explains trialing in that book or not, but I
It
know that
does.
I learned that in her level one training, and I'm guessing, that can be learned in a number of her webinars. And
Absolutely.
do you
In
want to
fact,
talk
I
about
have a
what?
webinar coming up, and there's a webinar on my Eating Protein Saves, well, um, on both my websites. It's a crash course in amino acid therapy that teaches you how to trial and gives you all this information. But trialing is really easy, Jeff, because you take an amino acid. We use an assessment tool that we call the amino acid therapy chart. And it was developed by a colleague, Julia Ross, who wrote a great book called The Mood Cure. But in it, well, the amino acid therapy chart, and also you can get the same information in my book, goes through the symptoms of depleted neurotransmitters. So it's depleted brain chemicals that lead to these symptoms, whether they be depression or anxiety or fatigue, or just be really tight and can't sleep, right? Um, these are all signs of depleted neurochemicals, neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin and GABA, the endorphins. People have heard of these. When they're low, we have symptoms and we crave relief. And a lot of mood altering, well, all the mood altering chemicals, the way they mood alter is by firing these neurochemicals to bring relief. And temporarily they do bring relief, and then they don't. And then over time, they deplete these neurochemicals even more. So we have a downward spiral. So you stop using them, and now you go into withdrawal, and like, oh my God, right? The body doesn't know how to function. So we bring in amino acids, which are the come from the protein we eat, and we digest the protein and we get to amino acids. And some of them get to the brain and actually make the neurotransmitter. Now, we can buy these purified amino acids over the counter from your vitamin store, even from GNC. You can buy them from Amazon, right? You can buy them. And if you choose a good quality company, they're good quality. Within 20 minutes, these aminos will turn into the brain, will turn them into a neurotransmitter and relieve a symptom.
And one of the things that I learned from you that I still remember is where um, pharmaceuticals may give a bump to the neurotransmitter, the amino acids over time, they build up
They
enough
make it
of a reserve or whatever to where
reserve.
the brain, the body can do what it needs to do so you can actually cut back on the amino acid at some point. And I've
Yeah,
had that
you can
experience
use food.
myself. So,
Right. It just rebuilds your supply. And then if you're eating well and sleeping well and exercising and not using addictive substances, the brain itself will maintain a higher level of these neurochemicals.
right. And so these can, like, I just want to say for people who are listening that Christina has really done a whole lot specific for people in addiction to get into recovery. Her metaphor, the three-legged stool, what's often missing from the traditional approach is the bionutritional or the biochemical leg of the
Right. Yeah.
stool. But the way that I have framed this with families who have an addicted family member and they have excessive amount of stress and they have symptoms like not sleeping at night, worrying, et cetera, et cetera. These amino acids can be helpful for those symptoms as well. So family members can learn about these amino acids themselves have their own experience and potentially, when the time is right, perhaps share some of that information if their loved one is open to a new perspective of recovery.
Yeah. Or if the loved one is trying to stop and is in withdrawal, these amino acids can turn off with or significantly reduce withdrawal symptoms and
Yes.
significantly reduce, post-acute withdrawal cravings by
Yes.
quickly rebuilding these neurotransmitters.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Christina, when I learned that from you and I started, kind of having conversations with some of my clients and incorporating some of what I was comprehending, it was a game changer in the amount of quote unquote tools in the toolbox to potentially use. And the other thing that I want to say here is that after learning from Christina, every person that I've ever spoke to that had a relapse, I would always ask the same question with every person who had a relapse, and Christina knows what I'm going to say. And the question is, when was the last time you ate before that relapse? And what has been amazing to me is it's been 100%, more than 4 hours. Often, oh, I didn't eat that day at all.
Exactly. You hear this over and over and over again, Jeff. And it's really quite mind blowing. I mean, if there was one concept that when I die, I want this concept to have made its way through the addiction recovery and treatment community, is missing a meal appears to be the number one relapse trigger for all addiction.
Yeah,
And therefore, getting 20 grams of protein every 4 hours really consistently. And if you're a premenstrual woman, every 3 hours, um, significantly transforms people's recovery journeys.
yeah. So, what I want to say here at this juncture is Christina has trained a lot of people on her website, is lists the names and contact info from so
Coaches,
many people who have learned this information. So, and of course, one of the reasons why I'm interviewing Christina is because I use this myself, of course, but
yes. You're one of
y-
my coaches, Jeff.
yeah, and so everything I do is like online, but for anybody listening, there's a lot of different people in a lot of different states that Christina has trained, and if you want to see someone in person, there's a high probability that someone close to you has some of this information. So, yeah, I just wanted to underline that.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. Absolutely. And what's so nice about this information is that it's useful to the whole family. It's useful to the person in active recovery, in active addiction, actually, and in recovery, both early and late stage recovery. It's also crucial to family members because you see, stress. If we have an addicted family member, we are under significant stress. It's stressful, it's painful, it's emotional, it's all these nasty things, right? Now, the more recovery we get into as a family member, we can manage the stress more effectively. But one of the tools that we can use to manage the stress is feeding our brains adequately because it's our brain's job, Jeff. It's our brain's job to allow us to cope with stress gracefully.
Yes.
But to
Yeah.
do that, it must be fed optimally. And we know exactly what nutrients uh, are that get depleted by stress. We know exactly what nutrients the brain requires to function optimally. We know the foods that contain these nutrients. This research was done decades ago. This is not rocket science. It may not, your psychiatrist may not know this, but your nutritionist knows it, and some of it's common sense. But what people find is once they start eating these foods that contain these nutrients or taking supplements to jumpstart the system, because I believe in beginning with food and ending with food, but maybe in the middle we'll use supplements, purified food to, quickly
Sure.
get ourselves
Yeah.
over these humps. The brain functions better. Now it has what it needs to allow us to cope with stress. And so
Yeah.
we cope better. We can learn new skills. We can be more flexible. We can forgive. Oh my, what a concept.
So, uh, one point that I want to make here, and I want to kind of circle around to treatment providers and facilities that are providing treatment, and some of them have really, really good food. However, and this is an observation, many of them don't really teach people, teach their clients actually how to continue good food when they
That's right.
leave that treatment center. And we live in a world where ultra processed food, it's quick, it's easy, we're all busy. And so, and again, I want to go back to your website, Eating Protein Saves Lives. I don't know what's on there now because it seems to have changed, but there used to be quite a few videos and
It's
quite a
there.
lot of
They're still there.
information, and even some free groups that were happening once a week. I don't know if that's still happening, but
The groups are not happening anymore, Jeff. But the
okay,
videos are there, the Nourish and Thrive kit's there, lots of really good information. But what is happening is that um, students of mine are taking our what used to be online groups, taking that material, and are creating in-person groups in their local community.
awesome. Yeah, awesome. And you mentioned the Nourish and Thrive kit, and I have a good idea of what that is, but could you say for people who are
Yeah.
listening a little bit more about what that is and how that can be helpful?
So, the purpose of the Eating Protein Saves Lives website and nonprofit is to educate the ordinary person about how to feed your brain optimally for mental health and addiction recovery. And so in it, we have information, we have videos, we have lots of ideas about how to improve your protein intake, recipes, shopping lists. And in the Nourish to Thrive kit, which is still a work in progress, it's not
Hmm.
where I want it to be yet, but its purpose is to teach cooking skills. We have recipes for sober living houses and for families, how much different food costs, how to put together a what we call our 5-star pro recovery diet food plan, how to develop meals based on these principles. And so there's lots of really, really good information in there
Yeah. And
on
and
how to
so
actually do this.
yeah, so I'm thinking some people may be thinking, "Oh wow, good food. That means I have to go to Whole Foods and spend a ton of money." The other part I remember about the Nourish and Thrive kit, and this was a number of years ago. I'm not sure if it's still the
Walmart.
same.
It's based on Walmart prices.
Walmart prices, and I think many treatment centers are like $60 a week per person, like SNAP. Um,
Right. Yeah,
that.
SNAP benefits. By the way, we also have a video and on it on the website as to how to make healthy choices on SNAP.
So this is accessible for a lot of different people, a lot of different financial situations. And
Yeah.
so I just wanted to mention that because I know this is a great resource. And there's way more to what you're offering other than, oh, you could have this pharmaceutical SSRI, or you could try some
That's right.
5-HTP, an amino acid, or whatever. Um,
That's right. That's right.
so
Lots of tools in our expanded toolbox.
and so where we're at right now, I want to ask you from our conversation or anything that you haven't said, are there any points that you can underline for family members specifically?
The answer is as close as your shopping cart and your refrigerator. Okay, it's not the whole answer, but
Yeah,
if you
right.
think about the three-legged stool, bio-nutritional, psychosocial, and spiritual, addiction is a disorder with all these three elements, but it's driven by the brain. And therefore, recovery to support a solid recovery journey, this is why we talk about a three-legged stool. Traditional treatment does a great job when it does, but it does a great job with the psychosocial and the spiritual. 12-step programs like AA do a great job with the psychosocial and the spiritual legs of the stool, and they ignore the brain completely, utterly, absolutely, other than, the pharmaceuticals. Okay? But have you ever tried to sit on a three-legged stool with only two legs?
Right.
One of the big reasons for the huge relapse rate out there, for people going round and round and round. Some research, Dr. Best out of Leeds University in the UK, said that it takes some people 17 years of trying before they get 5 years of continuous sobriety,
Wow. Wow.
right? And one of the reasons for this, not the only reason, it is a three-legged stool, but one of the huge reasons is that one leg of the stool is usually missing.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Or
So,
what people do is they switch over to sugar, which is also an addictive substance. Haha.
yeah.
And 20 years later, they may be clean and sober, but they have type 2 diabetes and they're obese and they have cancer because they can't stop sugar.
Yeah. Sugar. Oh my gosh. That's number one concern and challenge. I want to circle back to something specific, something I've considered a tip for family members that I learned from you, and I only remember a part of it, but that is for instance, moms who have a teen or young adult who's living at home and they're maybe smoking pot and what I remember is you were saying, one, you could put, like mom could put lecithin in a smoothie and have a smoothie for everyone in the morning. And lecithin, I'll shut up and let you kind of take it from here.
You know, what happens, Jeff, is that the better we feed our brain, the less need it has to go for addictive substances. And the slower the addictive process and building tolerance occurs.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things family members can do, what moms can do, especially, and moms are usually really good at this, is feeding their children, their adult children, their spouses, high quality food and bringing in really good supplements. That by itself is usually not enough to stop an addictive process, but it is enough to slow it down. And that matters. And so lecithin, along with fish oil and other supplements, are very useful for helping the brain recover from both tobacco or nicotine as well as THC. And it's so, there's all these tools, there's all these supplements that can help people recover from specific addictions. And I teach this, of course, in my training, and all my
Yeah.
coaches know this.
Awesome. So, do you want to let people know how they can learn more about you, get a hold of you, what you would prefer?
Absolutely. I answer my phone when I can. And when I can't, text me and I'll call you back as soon as I can. So my phone number is 303-888-9617. My email address is just my name, ChristinaVeselak@gmail.com. And then Jeff has also mentioned my two big websites, which is aminoacidtherapy.com for the school, eatingproteinsaves.lives.org for the nonprofit. And then, of course, you can get my book on Amazon or its own website, which is Eat for Recovery.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Christina. I really appreciate your time. This was a great conversation.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me on. And thanks for everything you're doing.
Thank you for spending this time with me on the Families Navigating Addiction and Recovery podcast. I hope today's conversation gave you something to pause with, maybe a new way to understand what is happening in your family, or a small shift you can carry into your next conversation with the person you love. If this episode brought someone to mind, I invite you to share it with them. Sometimes one conversation, one idea, or one different way of seeing things can open the door to change. You can also learn more about my book, Rethinking Addiction, The New Family Recovery Solution. In the book, I share a different way for families to think about addiction, communicate with more clarity, and create family rules that are stronger than addiction's chaos. All the details are in the show notes. You can also visit thefamilyrecoverysolution.com for resources, guidance, and next steps for families impacted by addiction. Thank you again for listening. I look forward to being with you in the next episode.